When it comes to bass fishing, every little tool helps. Let the birds help you find fish. Brought to you by Berkeley. Help you catch more fish. The old maritime saying of watch the birds to find the fish is certainly true in the ocean, where prey fish push bait fish to the surface and of course the birds feast on them. This is less true on inland lakes, but it does happen in the Great Lakes. Salmon will push alewives to the surface and the gulls and the cormorants will feed on those. But on smaller inland lakes the birds can be deceiving. Cormorants and gulls and other fish-eating birds really don't need prey fish to push bait fish to the surface. But there are ducks that can actually help you identify where smallmouth might be feeding because they feed on the same prey. Common mergansers can help you identify the depth and concentrations of goby and crayfish, the two top targets for smallmouth bass. Mergansers have a pretty broad food web, which includes aquatic insects, mussels, various invertebrates, but most of their diet is bait fish. But in late spring and early summer, you'll find them concentrating on low-hanging fruit, goby and crayfish, the same as smallmouth bass. These are much easier targets because they're so clumsy in the water. Even if they manage to get under a rock, the long serrated beak of a merganser can grab them. They're incredibly efficient and agile underwater and have no trouble racing down a goby and cover a lot of water from the surface. They swim along heads down, scanning the bottom, find a concentration, and dive. Like smallmouth, they're typically under 12 feet of water in late spring and early summer. Once they've found a food-rich area, they'll just comb it back and forth until they've exhausted the easy food. This is why it's so perfect to find habitat and food for smallmouth bass. Early in the summer, they'll target small crayfish, much for the same reason that they've added goby to their diet. They're plentiful, edible, and easy to catch. Rusty crayfish, an invasive species, spawn in very early spring and again in very late summer, so there's lots of small ones around. So small rusty crayfish and gobies, both invasive species, are primary targets for mergansers and smallmouth bass. These birds spook very easily, so you'll have to observe them from a long way away and of course watch them repeat a pattern. And of course, just because they're there, it doesn't mean there'll be bass there. But if there's bass in the general area, this is one of the first spots you want to look. In early spring, once you get the chicks to water, they're looking shallow water for aquatic insects. But by early summer, they'll be back on the goby feed bag and helping you find bass.